Have you ever had FOMO, the fear of missing out? I know I have, and usually what triggers it for me in whiskey is a brand new single cask release from one of my favorite whiskey distilleries. I will do anything I can to get my hands on that bottle. But does the fact that it's a single cask whiskey actually make it better than the standard bottlings from the same distillery? Today's video was inspired by a video request from a Whiskey on the West Coast Patreon member, Smeargel, who requested I crack open a GlenAllachie single cask whiskey and review it. Today, I'll be reviewing the Kensington Wine Market 2006 GlenAllachie 15-year-old Oloroso Sherry Butt single cask that was bottled for their 30th anniversary. And I'll be comparing it to the standard GlenAllachie 15-year-old Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. My name is Matt. This is Whiskey on the West Coast. GlenAllachie was a whiskey that we rarely saw bottled under its own name, with much of its whiskey destined to become blend filler. Well, a lot has changed since Billy Walker took over at GlenAllachie and released his new core range in 2018. He and his team have been plotting a new course for the distillery, having inspected every single one of the 50,000 casks in the 16 different warehouses they have on site. He's also moved much of that whiskey into new casks. He's changed the fermentation lengths to 160 hours and has launched a new peated GlenAllachie range called Michael Tour, as well as reducing the distillery's output to 20% of their actual capacity. A lot of this change, much of it, has been in the name of quality over quantity. And that's music to my ears, really, as a whiskey fan, as someone who wants the best whiskey possible. I don't want it quick, I want it good. While we wait to see these changes, how they were reflected in the GlenAllachie's whiskey, we can already reap the rewards of what might be Mr. Walker's biggest claim to fame, his tremendous cask management program. He has just this amazing ability to source absolutely excellent quality casks to mature his whiskey in. Speaking of that whiskey, let's get going on tasting these two whiskeys here. Let's set our baseline for this comparison with the GlenAllachie 15-year-old. Vital stats on this GlenAllachie is that it is 15 years old. This is actually the 1109-20 batch of the GlenAllachie 15-year-old. It's 46% ABV, non-chilled filtered, natural color. The cask makeup is both Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks. It runs about $135 Canadian out of Alberta right now, $160 in British Columbia. However, I actually got my bottle in 2021 for about $90, which was really great price. On the nose with the GlenAllachie 15-year-old, you get this lovely like sweet and sour interchange, mandarin orange and chocolate. Oh man, some like steeped black tea. There's a nice like light spice in there, like nutmeg, some molasses, and of course with big sherried whiskey like this, you're picking up like raisins, dark fruits, tree fruit, berries, prunes, dates, all those sorts of flavors in there on the palate. It's really lovely sipper, honestly, especially if you like a bit more oak in your whiskey. Oak is prominent on the front. It's definitely present, much more than the 8 or the 12 or even the 10 cask strength if you're familiar with those whiskeys. A lot more oak on this. Black tea and orange, so like orange pico tea, I'd say in that case. Chocolate again. There's a light like chili pepper and a little bit of heat on my first sip here going down the pipe. However, it's really approachable, really easy sipping, easy drinking. Raisins, oh man. Just going through the finish right now too. Some like earthy tones like leather. Oh. Starting off with that chocolate again. The chili pepper spice on the outside of the tongue. Raisin, prunes, again, dark fruit. But it's got that those traditional like Christmas cake flavors going on right now. Tobacco, leather on the palate. This is super quaffable. It's really easy drinking. And with the finish, you're getting those rich, lovely, like oaky wood tones. Dark chocolate now. It's a little bit more bitter on the finish. Again, probably that oak impact. And almost like the finish of a real nice, like sweet cigar. Which now I want to go and smoke a cigar on the patio. Canucks just got a big win over the Edmonton Oilers, 5-4. That's worthy of celebrating. But I'm getting that cigar finish off this right now too. Yeah, really lovely whiskey. And in fact, I did review this last year and I gave it an 86 out of 100 at that time. And as time has gone on, there's more air in this bottle, more headroom. Probably oxidized a bit. I think it's gotten actually a little bit better. I'd say this is closer to an 87 for me at this point. Really nice whiskey. Let's turn our attention to the real reason why we're here, the reason why Smear Gel went ahead and requested this review. So the single cask we're going to be reviewing is the Kensington Wine Market GlenAllachie 2006 15-year-old single cask. This is cask 4785. It was bottled for their 30th anniversary. If you're not familiar with Kensington Wine Market, they're absolutely my favorite whiskey retailer in all of Canada. They got the best whiskey store in the country, bar none for me. The vital stats on this bottle: it was distilled March 27th, 2006. It was bottled in August of 2021. It's 15 years old. It's bottled at 59.2% ABV. That's cask strength. That's 13.2% higher than the standard bottling, if you're keeping track. Again, non-chill filtered. It's natural color. It's coming from an Oloroso Sherry Puncheon, a single Oloroso Sherry Puncheon. Cask, again, number 4785. And this is bottle number, let me check the box here. It's bottle number 447 of 686. I believe, I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it, but I believe it was in and around $150, $160 Canadian out of Calgary, Alberta. Let's dig into this 2006 vintage GlenAllachie 15-year-old. And on the nose, wow, jammy fruits, it's juicy, and there's so much chocolate. The depth of flavor on the nose is something. It's packing a lot of flavor in here. Really just dense flavor notes. Yeah, a ton of chocolate. Honestly, it's coming off somewhat like chalky, the chocolate. Almost like cheap Easter chocolate, to be honest, if you're familiar with that, like the type that comes in that like multicolored tin foil. Cinnamon heart candies, I'd say, on the nose right now. Because there's that sweet cinnamon, like sugary sweet cinnamon. Prunes, raisins, cooked down fruits, like jammy and syrupy all over the place here. A classic like reference point for me is fruit leather, like you'd get in your like lunch kit as a kid. Oh man, and the nose actually reminds me of, and I get this throughout the whiskey in the times I've been drinking it, because I've been trying to try it as much as I can ahead of this review. I get a little bit of like a boozy like Newfoundland screech, like Newfie screech nose here, which is just like molasses heavy rum. Okay. Orange zest and like maybe like underripe blueberry, because it's a little too tart to be ripe blueberry at this point. Yeah. There's a bit of a nutty tone too. I'd say like almost like a macadamia nut. So actually a chocolate covered macadamia nut, like the ones you'd get like from Hawaii. And eventually it goes sweet and sour on the nose too here. Much like the standard release at 46%. I'd say though the nose is a bit tighter than the 46% GlenAllachie 15-year-old. I don't think it's quite as like open and expressive. You really have to dig for the notes here. There's more in there, but it's just harder to access them, I think, at this higher strength. Okay, I'm going to take a sip here. I'm going to come back and add a bit of water to this as well over time. because I think that's important and it's going to be a key thing to note about this single cask. But on the palate, that is a big whiskey that you're wrestling with. Wow, that's a metric ton of flavor. Okay, at the front end, there was molasses, there was cinnamon heart candies, much like on the nose, but there was also this like cayenne pepper, this hot pepper, all over the front of my tongue, all over the sides. Honestly, there was quite a bit of heat coming from this first sip on this whiskey. There's also some other elements like tobacco leaf or something more earthy like leather again. So some common themes there between these two releases, the flavor notes on them. Another sip here. Second sip, still a ton of heat, but it's more warming instead of actually hot. Chocolate and hazelnut, again, those are coming through. So like hazelnut hot chocolate, something like that. Rum, fruitcake, boozy fruitcake, raisin. Actually a super boozy fruitcake. Maybe smeared with Nutella. That would tie in the booze, the dark fruits, and the chocolate and the hazelnut. I think that'd be so. I mean, I might have to try that if I ever have fruitcake in the near future here. Maybe next Christmas. Smear some Nutella on that. Take a bite. See if it comes out kind of like this. Ridiculous tasting note aside, there's a ton of flavor on this. Thinking about the finish goes a little bit hot. It was cinnamon. There was some almost like hot chilies, again, still there. But the overwhelming thought for me, again, was like black strap, like navy rum, like dark rum, like that Newfie Screech rum that screams just like molasses, like really thick molasses based rum. That's the overall impression I get. Fruity, rich, sherry bomb. This is the sherry bomb of all sherry bombs that I've had from GlenAllachie. Quite something. I'm gonna add 2 water droppers of water to this whiskey, and what I'm gonna do is after I let it sit for a bit, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna tell you some of the differences I notice when adding water to this whiskey. Coming back to this 2006 15-year-old GlenAllachie single cask from an Oloroso Sherry Puncheon with 2 water droppers of water in it, allowed to rest a little bit. Oh man, any heat that was on the nose, the spice has been tamped down quite a bit. It's not the same, not nearly as low percentage as the 46% one, but it's actually about as approachable on the nose now, and it's opened up, and I'm getting more aromatic flavors here too. A lot of the same things are coming up, just easier to access them, but it's like straight up like black tea and berries, honestly, at this point. Yeah, it's really lovely actually, and it noses a lot. I'd say just a lot friendlier. On the palate, this is where I really noticed the difference with the water. With water, a lot more, I'd say like almost like Oloroso sherry funk comes through on the palate, which I love getting. Fruits are now turned towards more like raspberry. Getting milk chocolate on here. Really like the 2 water droppers help balances out because I'm not getting any of the heat, any of the alcoholic prickle on the front or the sides of my tongue now. Just a little bit of warmth with the actual swallow. And you can really start to pick out more and more flavors. When I was trying to write tasting notes for this for myself, for notes in my book, I really accessed a lot more of the flavors that I was trying to find once I added 2 water droppers to it. It really helped quite a bit. The water just really helps it settle and become a lovely whiskey. And on the finish, All those lovely chocolates, fruits, nutty tones, the earthy tones with the tobacco and the leather. Oh, and even some coffee dregs, like some really strong black coffee vibes on the end here. Great length. It's still continuing now. The finish, robust, really well presented whiskey. This is a fantastic sherry bomb. The only thing is, you really, I think, need to add water to it to fully appreciate how good it is. We're going to give this a score, but I just wanted to unpack a couple things about single casks versus regular releases before we give the score on this one. So are single casks better than standard releases? Really, the true answer is that depends on the single cask, but certainly they are not always better. This one is, however, but only once you've explored it with adding a decent amount of water. What does a single cask do well? Well, it gives you a unique and oftentimes idiosyncratic take on distilleries' whiskeys that can be incredibly engaging, just really quite special and quite delicious. Most single casks I find are naturally presented, cask strength, non-chill filtered, natural color, the type of whiskey that whiskey nerds really are looking for. And they really become this sort of choose your own adventure style whiskey where you get to choose the drinking strength of that whiskey. You get to say, hey, I want to drink this cask strength, or I want to add this much water, or I want to bring it down to about 46% or 40% or even lower. That said, a vatting of casks often can be better than a single cask. Why? Well, because they get to allow the master blender to kind of work with the whiskey, to pull other flavors in from a whole army of casks. They can add specific casks to the batch to help give it certain flavors and certain characteristics that a single cask just might not have. A good blender can find what's lacking in a vatting and add it to the batch. That is really the silver bullet that these larger batches that are oftentimes like 9,000, 12,000 bottles or more can have on their side, as opposed to a single cask. They also get to choose what drinking strength they think is best, and they being the master blenders. They can say, hey, this whiskey drinks best at 46% or 48 or 50, 52. They can say, this is where I think it presents best, and that's what we're going to bottle it at. Now, that also depends on what type of distillery, what type of company that master blender is working for, that blending team. And sometimes it's a team that's doing the blending, is working for. And luckily for us, GlenAllachie, they're giving us really naturally presented whiskey. Again, cask strength, with their single cask, with their 10-year-old. In this case, with the GlenAllachie 15, 46%, that's plenty enough ABV to really carry the flavors there. I think it drinks really lovely at its bottled strength. I don't add water to the GlenAllachie 15-year-old because I think it's perfect just the way it is right there. Both these whiskeys are very enjoyable. If I was drinking these whiskeys without fussing around with water, I think I'd actually prefer the 15-year-old standard release over the single cask, as it is, again, beautifully presented as is. However, with water, the amount of flavor that's packed into this Kensington Wine Market 30th Anniversary Oloroso Sherry Puncheon is phenomenal. It's really a true sherry bomb. And is clearly the winner in this showdown for me. I'm getting probably about 3 times as many tasting notes off this single cask than I am off the standard 15. And that's the strength of a single cask oftentimes, when you get a good one. In the end, I'm extremely happy having both of these. They both serve a purpose in my collection. If you're a fan of GlenAllachie, you're probably going to buy both in the end if you have a chance to find a single cask similar to this one. So with that said, would I suggest you pick up the standard 15-year-old, or who would I suggest it to? I'd suggest it to anyone who's already dabbled with GlenAllachie, has tried the 8-year-old or the 12-year-old, and wants to have another step up with a little bit more age. I think that's the standard 15-year-olds who they're really selling that whiskey to. And who would I suggest the Kensington Wine Market single cask 15-year-old to? Or another one similar to it, because you'll have a hard time finding this one if you're looking specifically for this one. And it's I'd recommend it to anyone who already loves GlenAllachie and their whiskeys and wants something a bit more special, a bit more limited, and really loves that sherry bomb profile. Honestly, in the end, I'm extremely happy again with both of these, and it really just comes down to what type of whiskey drinker you are. If you're an explorer or if you're a creature of comfort that just wants to pour the whiskey in the glass and drink it just the way it is. My score for the GlenAllachie 2006 Kensington Wine Market 30th Anniversary Oloroso Sherry Puncheon single cask release, it's going to be an 89 out of 100. That's 3 points higher than I originally scored the standard release of the GlenAllachie 15. And after the time to kind of oxidize, it's 2 points higher than the 87 I would give it tonight. It's a really great whiskey. I'm really loving it. It came off hot when I first cracked the bottle, but it's drinking lovely now with the addition of water. Thank you so much to my Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much to everyone who watches these videos and leaves comments. I really do try my best as quickly as I can to get to all the comments. So keep leaving them down below. Let me know if you've ever had a GlenAllachie single cask or if you like GlenAllachie. And if you've had any of the Meikle Tour releases, I'm hoping to review some of them soon. Let me know your thoughts on the Meikle Tour releases because they sound fantastic. Thanks again to my Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much, Smeargel, for requesting such a lovely whiskey review. I'm really loving this, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you for being a Patreon, and thank you to all those for joining me here on the West Coast and from the West Coast. Until next time, Slàinte.